Pam, several months ago, you and I were a little upset with the New York Times. And I think that was the publication that wrote all this. And it was a hack job on tongue tie release in infants. Tongue tie, of course, you'll explain what that means. And they were basically saying that dentists were doing this just to make money and it was unneeded. And the physician said it was unneeded. And everybody involved with children said it's unneeded. That's a horrible thing to do for the public, and you and I know that. So I want to talk about tongue release in infants. That's just that one subject and why it is so important. And yes, is there overtreatment? Absolutely, there can be. But when it's needed, it is absolutely, totally, 100% needed. And I want you to explain why.
We know, yeah, you're getting me all fired up already. Okay. We know that the tongue is what helps develop the entire face. And if a lactation consultant or the obstetrician or the pediatrician does not know how to properly diagnose a tongue tie, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment, that child's face will never develop correctly and that will impact their airway, it will impact their posture and all the other systems that go along with that we've talked about before on our podcast and on our YouTube. So, a tongue tie, what are we talking about for those of you that are listening? If you lift up your tongue, there's a piece of what looks like flesh underneath your tongue. It looks like a string. That's called your frenum, and that is predominantly made of fascia. Fascia is this like tissue that goes around the muscles and different organs in our body. Like if you've ever bought chicken at the grocery store, it's that white film. That's fascia when you're peeling it off. You see it in around all kinds of animal meats. But very common and easy one to diagnose is that if that muscle or that, excuse me, that tissue is at the very tip of that baby's tongue, that's the one that most doctors and lactation consultants can see and be like, oh, yeah, that baby has a tongue tie. Or by me, what that means is like the tongue cannot move correctly. It's tethered down, it's bound down, so the baby cannot latch correctly and cannot get the intake of milk that they need. Um, so a tip of the tongue tie is the easiest one for people to diagnose, and that's still good undiagnosed. 50% of the time or more, they say they'll grow out of it. You do not ever grow out of that. It has to be a structural release, whether it's with scissors or a laser, depending on the doctor. Then the one that's always undiagnosed. I mean, I don't ever say always, but it's true. It's called a mid-belly tie, where it's like that tissue, you can't see it because it goes further back in the tongue, like in the under part of the tongue. It's not at the tip. So it looks like they have good range of motion. But those babies, what to look for, moms and dads, is that if the baby, while they're nursing, you can hear them sucking. You shouldn't hear the baby sucking or or slurping. If you open their mouth and the tongue has a coat of milk on it, that tongue doesn't have the range of motion because there's some kind of restriction to wipe itself clean on the palate. If the baby is super gassy, I mean, once in a while, gassy is okay, but if they're gassy, it means again the tongue is not undulating correctly. So they're intaking a lot of air, which causes the bloated belly, discomfort, and the gas. And if the baby's not thriving, they're not gaining weight. It's again because they can't feed well. They're sucking, but they're mostly getting air in. So if the doctor is telling you that your baby is colic, it's I'm telling you, it's probably because of an undiagnosed tongue tie. And if at an infant stage we can see it and release it, that baby can feed correctly, it will sleep better, it can get the right nutrients that it needs. And then the face during the ages of 0 to 4, when the tongue can do what it needs to do, will help develop that upper jaw wide and forward. Then the face of the baby develops correctly and they have enough space for their teeth as their teeth come in and as they shed into their adult teeth. And then they also have good airway because that tongue was where it needs to be and everything is forward and not retracted back. Did that make sense, Mac, or did I
Yes,
overdo it?
yes, yes, yes. So not only does it help overall the health of the baby, but it's also modeling the upper jaw.
It totally models the
And
jaw.
at that age, it's like modeling clay, you
It
know.
is.
And so when the tongue is up there modeling it to make it look like a beautiful U instead of a V.
Mhm.
Now, you and I have seen thumb suckers, and most people have seen thumb suckers. If they suck way into 6, 7 years old like that, and they have that thumb in their mouth all the time, well, what happens to the front part of the upper jaw? It is in the shape of the thumb. And when they bite down, they have an open bite. That just shows you the power of any kind of
Yeah,
pressure
that's well
on
put.
that palate. So you want to have the right pressure. So in a really nice palate, it's shaped just like a tongue. Well, it can't be shaped that way if the tongue's not up there. And if they're tongue tied, the tongue can't get up there. It's not rocket science, it's common sense.
Why do you explain things so much easier than I do? And you let me go on and on and on and on. You could have just said that because that's
Maybe it's the way I was raised.
that's exactly right. And it's a tough place when we get these moms in our offices that are pulling their hair out. I mean, remember my oldest son, he's 22 years old, but when I was pregnant with him, when I had him in the hospital, he was tip of the tongue tied, like I was illustrating earlier. And I looked at the obstetrician. I was like, my son is tongue tied. I need to have him released. I mean, guys, that was like literally when I was 29 years old, and I didn't know what I know now. But the doctor told me, no, it's okay. And he's going to grow out of it. And I was so nice back then, not anymore, but I was so nice back then. And I was like, oh, okay. And I knew different, but I just didn't want to argue with my doctor. And I'll tell you what, that was the most miserable 3 month period of me and his father's life at that time. I'm telling you, there were times where we both were like, maybe I shouldn't say this, but we open up about everything on this podcast. But there's times when he and I looked at each other, we're like, wow, we get why people shake their babies. Because my son, he was so severely tied. My breast milk was not forming. I dried up in like 6 weeks. I was trying to pump. My son was 9.1 pounds when he was born, and he was constantly declining, getting jaundice, and they're like, you need to start pumping. There's something wrong with your breast milk. So I would measure the amount of milk. That stress was like immediately got me to start drying up. And then every time like we're measuring the amount of milk we're giving him in a bottle now, because I'm not supposed to be breastfeeding my son, is what they told me, so I can measure it. And it would take him 1 hour to get 2 ounces of milk. 2 ounces of milk. He'd always fall asleep at the bottle, wake up 20 minutes later, screaming and crying and gassy. And I remember his father and I looked at each other, we're like, we get why people shake their babies, because he was so exhausted and malnutrition and miserable. And that stress of like, what am I doing wrong as a mom, as a parent, and then not seeing your kids thrive. It's like, I mean, I'm a doctor, he's an attorney. It's like we're beating our heads in the wall, like, why can't we figure this out? And so finally, by the time I was able to get in with a doctor to do a tongue release, he was 3 months old. And I'm talking the minute they released it, and back then it was with scissors. 3 months is a lot harder for a zero infant baby to tolerate pain. They feel it a lot more at 3 months, by the way. But as soon as he released it, it's like, I remember Connor went to the bottle and he was like, it's like all of a sudden, like he got flushed with a bunch of milk or formula at one time and didn't know how to swallow it because of that range of motion being so different. And my God, Mac, he became such a quiet, wonderful baby. He slept through the nights. He was happy. He wasn't spitting up and vomiting. And yes, we're still buying like $40 a thing of small formula because we were told he has all these allergies, which he never did. So, I don't think doctors are ill-intended. I just think people don't know what they don't know. It's frustrating. And to be flat out honest with you, I say that a lot to be nice, but that's a bunch of nonsense. If you're a doctor or a healthcare provider, it is your responsibility to learn
Absolutely.
more and diagnose and see things that you didn't see a year ago. So stop being lazy and start thinking and seeing differently. Um,
Listen,
Suffering, man.
all of that happened to you and your son and your husband to create all the problems, et cetera, all because you were told he will grow out of it. And that pisses me off.
Me too.
It really does. And the thing is, did you pay that doctor?
I sure did.
So when you pay somebody, they work for you.
Hmm.
When they do your yard and you pay them, they work for you. If you're a doctor and you have team members, they work for you.
Hmm.
And if you go to a doctor and you pay that doctor works for you.
Hmm.
And they are bound by not only common sense, but they're bound by the oath that they took, that they have to listen to you and they have to understand what's going on. And if they don't, it's their duty to find out somebody that does know.
Yeah. You know,
It's
I,
it's very frustrating. That's why we're opening up. That's why we call this open up.
yeah, and that's why I can say things here that I don't say chairside to a parent because I would terrify them and make it, I seem like an alarmist, but my background is treating TMJ and sleep apnea patients. These are adults that have had chronic pain all their lives and suffer to the brink of quite often suicide.
Right.
Every part of their life is not good because they have chronic pain. And I'm looking at ENTs and lactation consultants. I'm like, can you just pause and look and diagnose correctly so that these babies never have to meet me later in life? That's the point of all this. I
Absolutely.
mean, a frenulectomy or a frenectomy is not going to be the promise of everything great, but it will set you up so much better for the right jaw development so you kids can breathe correctly and develop correctly cognitively, physically, and they don't become these adults with chronic issues that's not just their joint and their teeth, but it's their airway, the cardiovascular health, the posture, their psychology. It's all of that by the time they see me. And that's why I get so pissed off and passionate about treating kids and infants. I don't see, just because I see a history of pain in adults doesn't mean that I only see one thing. But God, if I don't make the time to make sure that I look at people uniquely, and if there's structural issues that they are known about and addressed. And that's all I can do as their provider if they pick me.
100%. And when somebody repairs or redoes your roof, they have to do a good job. And there are a lot of snakes out there that are selling bad roofs. There are a lot of dentists that's going to sell you unneeded dentistry. So the only safety you have is to be educated on
Yeah.
the things that we're talking about. That's why they need to sign up to our podcast and listen to all of them.
Yeah, so please, like, if you listeners and viewers find these things helpful, Mac and I, this is not monetized, you know that. Please share it. There's information you can find out there. We try to keep ours is very honest and true. We've told you this about Mac's book. It's the TMJ trifecta, solving your pain puzzle. It's so simple to read. Get it from Amazon. If you suffer or you just don't know what to look for, this is a wonderful starting point.
It does cover the tongue tie and facial development. And so it does it all in common sense, easy to read. It's for the public. It's also for dentists that don't know what they're doing, ENTs that don't know what they're doing, MDs that don't know what they're doing, and the list goes on and on and on. This is
I
a
would,
worldwide problem.
I would give these things out like hotcakes. I just hope people read them,
Me too.
especially doctors, right? Anyway, boy, I feel like I had an emotional catharsis there. All right. Until again.
Good to see you. All right, bye.